All right. Yep, we got the chat. No, Gina, I wasn't saying anything. Let me know. Give me a thumbs up if you can hear me. Okay, good deal. So, all right, looks like the audio is working. It did come up with an error that said my speakers weren't working and that the audio may not be recorded. So we'll just have to hope and see that it works out okay. Yeah, I just wasn't saying anything. I was just like, hello, Don Miller. Hello, Nicole Diamond. Thank you for the thumbs up. All right, so welcome to this PSIA Speech Judge Training. I'm Doug Ray, your Executive Director, in case you don't know me. And I'm very happy to have you here today to learn about some of the judging that's involved with PSIA. Let's just go ahead and get started here. Questions are welcome at any time. Feel free to unmute yourself or put the question in the chat, and we'll get to that, or someone else could answer that for me if they have the answer to that. All right. So speech judging, here are some of the particulars that are specific to PSIA speech judging. These may be different depending on different organizations that you have been involved with in the past. Our contestants are given speaker letters, A, B, etc., all the way through I. This is because we had confusion several years ago between the speaker numbers. They were going the first speaker, second speaker, third speaker versus the ranks that those people were getting, and the judges were getting those confused. So when a speaker comes up to the front to speak, the contest director calls for speaker A. Speaker A then holds up a little sheet that says A, and the judges know that they're on speaker A. So the judges do need to keep track of which speaker they're on. The contest directors are instructed not to skip letters and not to rearrange the order of the speakers. There could be a possibility where we have to do that for some other logistical reason that was missed or whatever, but that is extremely rare. Maybe 1 in 1,000 times we would have to do that. But that's what we use. We use speaker letters, A through I. The ranking system that we use, 1 is the best. So you want to assign the best speaker out of that group, then a rank of 1 for first place. Second best is 2, third best is a 3, and then so on, up to the number of contestants that were in that round. So just remember, the lower the number, the better your assessment of that speaker. The judges need to rank all speakers, even if you believe one of those speakers may have disqualified themselves for some reason. The reason we do this is because what you may think of as a disqualification may not actually be a disqualification. And so we do need your original rank of all the contestants, and we'll handle the disqualification later. In fact, that's the job of the contest director to note any disqualifying condition for that speaker. So as a judge, you don't worry about disqualifications. Our judges in the speech contest do not collaborate on their ranks. This is different from ready writing, creative writing, and on-site drawing, where the judges do collaborate. In speech, they do not collaborate. The one exception to this rule is when there's a 3-way tie. If there is a 3-way tie, the next step in the PSIA speech ranking procedure is to have the judges conference together to determine the relative ranks of those 3 speakers involved in a tie. The contest director will know if there's a 3-way tie if they go ahead and do the index ranking in the classroom. So we have instructed the contest directors to go ahead and take all the ranks from the judges go ahead and sort them least to greatest, right? Or lowest number to highest number, which is best rank to lowest rank. And then use the index chart to come up with the index. If there are 3 indices that are the same, that's a 3-way tie. If all of the indices are different, there's no problem and the judges can be released. If 2 of the indices are the same, it's a 2-way tie, and we will break that using judge's preference. But it's the 3-way ties that caused some headaches during the district rounds of competition this season. The contest director had let the judges go, then did the rankings, and then, oh no, there's a 3-way tie. Now what do we do? And since the judges couldn't be reassembled because they were off doing other things or they had left the meet, then it went down to ballot evaluation by an independent third party, or in this case, fourth party, where that person reads the ballots of all the contestants involved in the tie and makes a judgment call on based on what the judges wrote about which of those speakers was the best, the middle, and the lowest. It's not exactly ideal to have that situation where someone who hasn't watched the contestants perform is making the determination about their rank. But we do that, and then if we can't do that, then the next step is just to flip a coin. So the ties have to be broken. Remember that when you are judging a speech contest, you have to give unique ranks to the contestants. You're not allowed to give 2 contestants first place. You can only give 1 contestant first place, 1 contestant second place, all the way down through the number of contestants. As far as our dress for the judges, please dress in sort of business casual, not too fancy, but no shorts, no bare midriffs, and no flip-flops. And you may think that these examples are sort of drawn out of the air. Just like the warning, do not step on this top step of the ladder, there's a reason for these specific admonishments. And you can sort of figure out, put the pieces together for that as well. We have a chat comment. Do we have a contest director meeting today? Yes, the contest directors meeting is at 7 o'clock. So stay tuned for that. That's in a different meeting, right? So you have to log out after this meeting and come back to that one at 7 o'clock. 7 o'clock Central, by the way. Because we do have friends who are in the Mountain time zone. Give us a big wave if you're in Mountain. Go ahead. Hello. There they are. That's right. Mountain people. Okay. Thank you so much. All right. Okay. Appropriate gestures and movement. So what we would like to see from the students is this responsive use of the body. So spontaneous changes in posture, gesture, and the place-to-place movement. That is permissible. We don't want them standing there like a statue, and we don't want them running around the room all frantic and everything else. It has to be some sort of middle land right there where it's responsive to the piece or the topic that they are presenting. The active use of the body should be appropriate to the demands of the selection, be a natural outgrowth of the literature or the speech that is being performed. It should not call attention to itself, and it should be limited in scope. So the goal is the oration, and the body movement is there to enhance that and not take away from it. I believe that some organizations have some kind of rule about a box where they actually, this is what I've heard, they actually draw a box in tape on the floor and the student is not allowed to step outside the box. We don't do that. We say 1 or 2 steps are permissible for the presentation, but ultimately we're going to rely on you as a judge and your discretion about whether or not how much motion they have performed is too much, too little, or just right. Any questions about sort of the body movement part of this? We do get concerns all the time that this student should not have been given first place because they moved too much, or they didn't move enough, or they didn't move at all. It's really at the discretion of the judges. So we rely on them to adjudicate that for us. All right. So that was sort of the general rules for our speech contest. At this time, I want to take a look at each of the 4 different types of speech contest and let you know what is on the judge's evaluation sheet for each contestant. So impromptu speaking is our contest where the contestants draw 3 topics out of an envelope. They have a minute to select which topic they want to speak over or address. And then they have 3 minutes to prepare that speech. Then they deliver it without notes, impromptu. That's why it's called impromptu speaking. And in this contest, what you'll be evaluating is, was the presentation organized clearly and effectively? Was the speaker's delivery smooth and articulate? Did the speaker have adequate eye contact? Creative approach to the topic? Was the speaker poised and confident? Did the speaker have vocal variety? And was the speaker interested and enthusiastic? Did the speaker communicate with the audience and use permissible body gestures? So there's the body gestures again. For an impromptu speech, I think that part of the body gestures is going to rely on what the topic is. If it's something heavy, probably less body movement. If it's something sort of light and airy, then maybe a little bit more would be appropriate. The judges use their discretion to figure that. Any questions over impromptu? Now, I should also mention that the judges are not responsible for any of the timing. The contest director does all of the timing. If the student goes over time, they do get disqualified, but you would not know that. The contest director doesn't stop the student. They do put up a warning sign and encourage the student to stop, but you would not know, oh, Timmy, sorry, you went over time, you're disqualified, get out of the room. They don't do it that way. You just rank them as normal based on what you see as the presentation. Would going over even a few seconds result in disqualification? Even going over a microsecond would result in a disqualification. Yes, that is correct. Any amount of time over is a disqualification. But like I said, the contest director holds up a 30-second sign. So they know to wrap it up, and they've got 30 seconds to do that. Let's take a look at modern oratory. So modern oratory is the contest where the students have been given a list of possible questions that they can present an argument for or against. I'm pulling up the handbook now to show you that, okay, there it is. There are the topics that the students can orate over this year. I'll read them to you. Number 1, are concerns around young people's social media use justified? Number 2, is the opioid crisis being adequately addressed by Texas communities? Number 3, can government do more to reduce poverty in the United States? Number 4, has name, image, likeness, also known as NIL, been good for college sports? And number 5, does the United States have an effective justice system? So pretty heavy topics for 7th and 8th graders. And they're required to address one of those topics. You'll know which one they address based on their speech. Yeah, they're pretty tough topics there. So during the modern oratory speech, you're looking for the following. Did the speaker demonstrate effective communication? Was the speaker able to enlist and hold the interest of the audience? So for that, as a judge, you're allowed to sort of look around and see how the audience is reacting to the speaker. And also your interpretation as being part of the audience as well. Or were they able to hold your interest in their speech? Were gestures limited to the scope of the oration and not over dramatized? Did the speaker have an appropriate introduction? Did the speaker define the problem? and clearly state both sides of the issue. So this is an important topic right here. In the rules, it says that here's the question that is being posed. The speaker should clearly define what the problem is based on the question and state what is sort of both sides of the issue. So for the NIL one, has image, name, likeness been good for college sports? Well, yes, because it's provided athletes with a lot of money. But no, because it's created this monster called the transfer portal where you don't know where college athletes are going to play next year because they just go to wherever there's the highest money. That's, that's sort of the both sides. And then the speaker can sort of take a position on that overall NIL is good for college sports because blah blah blah, and then they enumerate their points and come to the conclusion. So, did the speaker reach and support their conclusion? Was the speaker addressed appropriately? No costumes and no school uniforms. And did the speaker analyze and develop the topic, giving both sides of the issue? So there it is again. What are the two sides of this issue? Is NIL good? Is NIL bad? Social media use is justified and for young people, and social media justified is overblown for young people. So that's what you're looking for in terms of judging modern oratory. It's all about taking analyzing the question and sort of demonstrating both sides, but then ultimately taking a stand and supporting your position with facts and excellently developed points. This is why it's always great to have lawyers volunteer to be judges for modern oratory, because this is what they do for a living. They go ahead and they give out arguments, and they have to convince people, a judge or a jury, of their position based on the facts and the points that they make. Does anyone have any questions over modern oratory? All right. And do you love this graphic? I'm not sure why ChatGPT thought it would be a good idea to put this kid right here in the middle, in front of the modern orator. But anyway, he's there. So all the graphics today were generated by ChatGPT, in case you're wondering. All right. Yeah, I don't know. I was like, why are you here? All right. Oral interpretation. So oral interpretation was the old prose interpretation or poetry interpretation. I got tired of changing the name every year, every summer, and then missing one or two spaces. So then I'd have to explain to people in email that no, it's really the other one. So I just changed it to oral interpretation. It still goes back and forth every year. So this year is prose. And this is the one where students have prepared a piece of prose, a story, bit of fiction, autobiography, or biography, whatever it is. And they're going to present that under 6 minutes. They have to develop an introduction to their piece. And the introduction has to be given with the book closed. Then, after the introduction, they open the book and they present their piece. What is a little bit different and specifically enumerated in the handbook this year is that they can do the introduction as an embedded introduction, which is they start with the book open and they read a few lines or a paragraph or whatever, sort of a teaser. Then they close the book and they say, hello, I'd now like to present my story, blah, blah, whatever it is, as the introduction and why they're doing the introduction. And then they open the book again and then they continue with the piece. So some people thought the embedded introduction would be a disqualifying factor. It is not. So you do have to be careful as a judge to make sure that there is an introduction and the introduction is done with the book closed. It just doesn't have to be at the very beginning. It could be a little bit into the middle. Now, we don't have a time limit or anything that says, well, it has to be done within the first minute or anything like that. I suspect that you can use your good judgment to determine that if the introduction comes 4.5 minutes in, then it's probably misplaced as an introduction, and that should be accounted for. But it should be fairly close to the beginning. Not necessarily right at the beginning, but fairly close to the beginning. So, is the required introduction given from memory? The book closed. Does it effectively introduce the work, drawing the interest and setting the mood? Is it relevant? Is the information relevant to the piece that the student is about to perform? Insights and understandings. Now, all these items that I'm listing to you, these are all on the evaluation sheet for oral interpretation. So, insight and understanding. Is the selection appropriate for age level and student ability? Does the speaker display understanding of the selection, evidenced by the recreation of the mood, setting, point of view, and the intent of the piece? Voice and diction. Is pronunciation acceptable and enunciation clear and distinct? Are pitch, rate, and volume appropriate? Is vocal variety sufficient? And does the voice control the performance? Okay, so I want to say a little bit about this. Enunciation acceptable and enunciation clear and distinct. That is important. But we should not be docking students because they have a foreign accent. Okay. I felt like some judges last year may have crossed over to that wrong side of the line by docking students because of their accent, given that this is their natural speaking voice. Okay, so be very careful with that. We don't want to dock them because of their natural speaking voice is a certain foreign accent, but it does have to be clear when they are enunciating. You can mention things like, I need you to enunciate better certain words, this and that, things like that. But you should not be making any comments about their foreign accent and how that needs to improve. That's not appropriate. All right, moving on. Gestures and bodily action. Is the speaker poised? Gestures, again, a natural outgrowth of the work, not overacting, not distracting. Does the speaker reference the script? Now, we know that our best speakers have their piece memorized, but they're still required to occasionally sort of look down at the piece and read from the script. Okay, so make sure that they're doing that at least a little bit so that it complies with this rule. Is the speaker dressed appropriately without costume or school uniform? The pacing. Did the performance move through the phases of logical and emotional progression? Did the pacing, silence, and the build seem appropriate? Was the presentation long enough for effectiveness? So remember that they take these long pieces and they cut them down. The points where they're cut should be taken into consideration as far as building the narration and the piece itself. Character portrayal, were the characters distinctly portrayed vocally, physically, emotionally, and intellectually? And then the overall effectiveness of the presentation. Did the speaker communicate clearly the selection, maintaining the students, the listeners' interest? Was the performance consistent and interesting and effective? So those are the items that we're looking at for oral interpretation. Can anyone have any questions with oral interpretation? All right, good deal. And then lastly, storytelling. So contestants in this contest, they are read a new story that they've not heard before. And then they come back into the classroom one by one and they retell the story in front of an audience. So a point of emphasis this year is that the judges only hear the title of the story, and they're not judging for a detailed, accurate account of the story. That's not totally essential to the contest, but beware that the contestants, they sometimes start the story and then they weave it into another story that they've heard before or something that they've pre-memorized from somewhere else. And it's vastly different from the story that was read to them for the contest. That should be considered a deduction. Now, here's how this works. So since as a judge, you are not read the story, you don't know all of the details. But if you have 6 contestants in a section and 5 of them tell a story about this, and one of them tells a story that's somewhere over here that's not quite related to what the other 5 told you, that's sort of the key there, that contestant didn't follow the story and is sort of telling a different story that was different from the one that was read. Okay. The story title will also give you an indication about what the story is going to be about. Usually main characters and maybe a little bit of the plot line as well. Okay. Here are the items on the individual evaluation sheet for storytelling. Did the contestant command attention, tell the story with ease, exhibit enthusiasm? Did the contestant tell a story that might have the title that you were given? So that's the point I was just making. That's where that consideration is denoted on the evaluation sheet. Did the contestant exhibit originality in facial responses? Did the contestant exhibit originality in vocal interest, in characterization? Did the contestant seem relaxed? Use good eye contact, good posture? Were the gestures effectively used and not overdone? Did the contestant articulate well? And did the contestant communicate effectively with the audience? So those are the items that are on the list. Okay, let's see here. All right, Karen, we'll get to your comment here in a second. Does anyone have any questions over storytelling? Okay, very good. Karen asked, if a student does the intro at the beginning with the book closed, is the title of the selection and the author considered part of the intro, and therefore the book has to be closed while saying the title and the author? I don't know that we have a rule that specifically addresses that. The contest director is supposed to state the title and the author when the contestant comes up. So, Speaker B, now presenting Moby Dick by Herman Melville. Then the contestant starts. There is a movement in PSIA to require the students to mention the title and the author, and to do that in the introduction. So that may be a rule for 2025. Personally, I think it's a very good practice for the student to include the title and the author in their introduction. It gives the author credit for the piece of work. It clearly announces what the title is, in case somebody else is interested in reading more of this work or something like this. It's just probably a very good idea to go ahead and do that. But currently, it is not a rule for or against anything to do that. Don, go ahead. You should be able to unmute yourself, I think.
Okay. Hello, Doug. Hello, everyone. Throughout the years that I've seen this done, typically the students do usually include it in their introduction. I know my students always have. I haven't been in a contest, for a while, for a few years. So I didn't know that we needed to introduce it for them. That's a good idea as well. But I usually find that the students have put it into their introductions.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's a great comment. And the complaint that I got during the district season was that it should be a disqualification if they don't. So I think it may be something that we start practicing doing, and we'll see. We have an advisory board that meets over summer to address rule changes, and this could be something that gets looked at over summer. But yes, so the advent of announcing the title and the author, that came about with the new digital documentation, because we wanted to make sure that the piece that the contestant was about to read was the same piece that they had been approved for with the digital documentation. we no longer require the contest directors to verify the documentation right before the contest. We've done it all pre-hand, and it just is listed right there on the rosters, document approved or needs documentation. And right now we have about 96% documentation approved. We're still waiting on about 4 people. So we'll get that 4%, I tell you. Is the title and author provided by digital documentation? Yes. Yes, that's part of the list that sponsors submit whenever they put in the digital documentation, in addition to the PDFs that actually declare the documentation to be what it is. That, in fact, the digital documentation list is the same list that I just print off and put in the packets for the contest directors to use. It's the exact same page. So, questions? All right. Other questions? All right. Well, thank you for supporting PSIA Speech. We thank you for your service. We couldn't have the speech contest without you. We'll have the hospitality room open. It's in Derrick 229, so feel free to stop by and get some snacks whenever you get a chance during the day. There'll be a light lunch in there as well. Thank you so much. Gina, this is our first time to do speech judge training, and so I hope it was helpful for everyone. Yes, thank you very much.